My Lord and my God, I firmly believe that you are here, that you see me, that you hear me. I adore you with profound reverence. I ask pardon for my sins and the grace to make these moments of prayer fruitful. My Immaculate Mother, Saint Joseph, my Father and Lord, my guardian angel, intercede for me. I have to admit that I arrived at this point in the liturgical year thinking that I had spent so much time contemplating Jesus' life that even if there were no massive changes in my vision of him, of who he is, well, you always know that you're growing closer to him, the same way that you grow closer to anyone when you spend time with him. I mean, that's natural, right? And it's true. We spend months in Lent and Easter contemplating the most important events of his life, and we're always going to discover something and come closer to him. But then I ran into today's gospel and I felt like I had something completely different to learn. And now, Lord, as I look at you in my prayer, I can't help but smile at that fact. I know it's not a matter of having it wrong beforehand, but that you're continually showing us new things, and you're continually making our interior life new. So, in today's Gospel, we catch John the Baptist in the middle of an explanation about who you are. I listen to him and see that it's full of faith, a real deep consideration about you as Messiah. And that's not just the part that we read at Mass today, but the whole of this section of the Gospel. Like, he's not just telling us he brings the good news even to the poor, he heals the blind, the deaf, the leprous and the lame, and he even raises the dead. And that's what I would have expected him to say, I suppose, because that's exactly the message by which you sent confirmation to him that you are indeed the Messiah. So he must have known to expect those sorts of deeds from you. But obviously, he knew you better, much deeper. And I think it's that deeper knowledge that St. John the Baptist wants to communicate. Here, we can listen to him in the Gospel as he strives to tell the people something more relevant. He says, "The one who comes from above is above all. The one who is of the earth belongs to the earth and speaks about earthly things. The one who comes from heaven is above all. He testifies to what he has seen and heard, yet no one accepts his testimony. Whoever has accepted his testimony has certified this, that God is true. He whom God has sent speaks the words of God, for he gives the Spirit without measure. The Father loves the Son and has placed all things in his hands. Whoever believes in the Son has eternal life. Whoever disobeys the Son will not see life, but must endure God's wrath." This is actually what John the Baptist does in the first chapter of this Gospel too. He doesn't talk just about deeds and signs and miracles and the like. He wants people to understand not just what Jesus does, but who he is. And that's the same as us, of course. What Jesus does is really interesting for us, but mostly because it helps us to know who he is. And that's what we ask of you always, Lord, especially as we spend this time with you in prayer. We want you to help us to know you as fully as we can, because, to be honest, sometimes you seem just a little bit more distant and hidden than I would like. So, if I put myself in the shoes of John the Baptist for 1 minute, I think, how did he get all this knowledge about Jesus? Maybe God just revealed it to him by a miracle. That's possible. Who knows? Maybe it came from his experience of Jesus as his cousin. Could be the case. But it's quite realistic that he had got that knowledge by considering the truth which he had learned, both from his faith and through his own mission in life. He clearly knew enough that he could recognize him. We want exactly the same. We want that capacity to recognize Jesus Christ. But, as John the Baptist teaches us today, we don't learn that only by meditating on the life of Christ. The whole of the faith is important for helping us to understand who God is and how we relate to him. It's really important that we let the truths of revelation guide our prayer, because it's all too easy to let the contrary happen. We let our prayer guide what we think is the truth about God. Let me explain. There are certain common temptations that people find in their prayer life, which lead them to have a bad vision of who God is. There are people, for example, who see God as being angry at sin, or even more dangerous, angry at sinfulness. There are others who see God as just some sort of benevolent tyrant, one who can be less benevolent at times than they would like. And then there are those who see God as a sort of slave master, one who says, do whatever I say or else you're going to suffer, and at the same time takes everything for himself. The list could go on and on and on, of course. There's no limit to the erroneous things that we could think about God. And it's enormously common in the interior life to battle with those temptations. Well, why do we have to put up with temptations like that, you might ask? Actually, they can do us a lot of good, is the answer. Not the temptations in themselves, of course, but the result of overcoming them. Let's take, for example, someone who feels like God is angry and fears him before a person's frailty and sin. Now that person is obviously going to suffer. They're going to feel burdened by that anger. They're going to feel unable to escape and perpetually unhappy with themselves. It's actually basically a recipe for unhappiness. But then that person, if they discover the truth about God in their interior life, experiences a radical change. They don't simply see God as he is, but they experience the joy of discovering who he is and of being liberated from that prison of unhappiness straight into the arms of freedom. The transition makes sure that the lesson is learned deeply. They treasure that truth all the more because of the pain they experienced before discovering it. But how do you and I learn that? One of the best things we can do is to subject our emotion and prayer to the truths of revelation. That really means that we have to train ourselves to know God as he is, such that our emotions don't delude us with the temptation to think something else. So, as John the Baptist shows us today, it's not enough for us to know Jesus Christ. We also have to know about him, which in turn leads us to know him better. So Jesus, help us to know you like that, depending on the truths that your church and the 2,000 years of her spirituality have brought to us. Really, we need your help to have the imperfections in the way we see you stripped away. Probably, like everyone else, I've seen this happen time and again in human things too. In fact, when I sat down to think about the examples that I could use to explain it, I found that there are literally too many. I couldn't tell you the number of times that someone has come to me to complain about such and such a person and why did they say this or that, why did they react in that way, etc., etc. Probably sounds familiar to all of us. And then when you give them a bit more information about the person, oh, well, he's had really bad experiences with whatever it is, or, well, the thing is that she grew up in a situation that had whatever it might be. Well, on hearing that, everything changes. It's like the penny drops, and they see the other person in a totally different way. Whatever it was that was getting on their nerves just disappears because they know more about the person. Knowing that helps them to understand the person better. As I'm here talking, I can't help but think of my terribly embarrassing experiences while trying to speak Italian. While I was living in Italy, especially when I arrived, my Italian was so bad that when I'd walk into a shop and start talking to someone, they'd look at me like I was drunk or on drugs or something and just couldn't put a rational sentence together. Then I'd explain that I'm very sorry, I don't speak Italian, but... and everything would change. Instead of trying to get me out of the shop as soon as humanly possible, they'd lighten up and enjoy helping me to practice Italian. In the end, actually, I just decided that the first thing I'd do whenever I entered a shop was to begin by explaining, I don't speak Italian very well, but... So, Lord, help us to know about you, to really take to heart everything that the church teaches about you. I think we all know that that means studying, reading more, but we'll all agree that it's worth it because in the end it's going to help us to know you better, deeply, which is the whole reason that we engage in this prayer. As we finish our prayer, We ask Our Lady to guide us in our study of the faith, in order to also guide us to Jesus Christ. Our dearly beloved Mother, we entrust this intention to You, along with the whole of our interior life, as we always do. I thank You, my God, for the good resolutions, affections, and inspirations which You have communicated to me in this time of prayer. I ask Your assistance in putting them into effect. My Immaculate Mother, Saint Joseph, my Father and Lord, my guardian angel, intercede for me.